to you and a warm welcome to Northern TV Political Dive program. It is Wednesday, the 23rd of September 2020. I want to take this time to welcome you aboard this very episode of our Political Dive program. My name is Fred Mungurek. And of course, today I'll be your host. And remember, we do have a guest with whom we shall be sharing key issues. We shall be actually dissecting some of the issues that came during the presidential address on COVID-19. And to start our discussion today, I will be introducing our guest who happens to be making his second appearance on the show, that is Political Dive this evening. We do have Honorable Thorinyowa Jeff, who is the male councillor representing Thatha Division in the Nebi District local government. A good evening and a warm welcome on your second time on the Political Dive show.
So humble to be here. Thank you very much for inviting me, and good evening to viewers as well.
Right, just like I mentioned, we are going to be dissecting the presidential address, the key issues in President Museveni's Sunday address to the nation as pertains to where we are with the COVID-19. And to start our debate off, Honorable President Museveni tackled key issues, one of which is the resumption of schools and particularly candidate classes who are getting back to school on the 15th of next month. First of all, what is your analysis of this particular decision by President Museveni and his team to allow schools to reopen for only finalists?
Thank you, Fred. First of all, to begin with, right at the beginning of this academic year, I've had problems with the education system in the country. Starting way back when they introduced, new curriculum. I always thought that was a big problem. Introducing a new curriculum that is not equally spread all over schools in the country in a manner that other schools would access the material to have new curriculum, others would not. That was my first point of disagreement with government on education system. And then COVID just didn't help the situation. Locking down the country as far as March, we are now in September late. Kids are not in school. We've lost one entire term. And now literally we are in the promotional term. That's third term. And the president and the government is saying that schools should reopen and strictly for candidate classes or finalists. The rationale behind this is the one that bothers me. Why only finalists? You mean first term and the whole of second term would not add on anything for the finalists, or what? They're behaving as if second term was not for the finalists. What makes you to go in and begin to do examination at the end of the year is basically facilitated by what you could have learned through first term and second term. I'm asking, what are these finalists really going to do in school? Whether they will be examined at the end of it all, and when will that be? Fred, you and I know very well that even throughout the academic year, even if we don't, nothing comes up to interfere with it. We've known schools that actually struggle to complete the syllabus, even in normal circumstances. But now that we've lost all this period, and then you think a certain group of students can go ahead to continue and even do exams. Over time, I've always wanted to hear from the Ministry of Education telling us specifically that even when we are learning, kids are learning through radios, TVs, or printouts in newspapers, whether they will be using those materials to examine them, whether those things are examinable. That has always been my question. But they seem not to come out clearly that all this they are doing is to facilitate examination at the end of it all. And therefore, why is government so shy of really thinking along with the rest of us that this year academically is a waste? Me as a parent and many others know it and we have accepted it. I can assure you, if schools open tomorrow, my kids are not going to school. They are not.
Why?
To do what? To do what? I know.
Someone could argue that maybe probably your kids are not in the category that the government wants to return to school.
That may be it, but Fred, if you go through the normal school terms and you still think you're not well prepared to do examinations, for me, I want the government to come out clearly that the main reason of taking these lads back to school is to prepare them for examination. There we can now engage for a very serious discussion. Because I know these kids have done really, really nothing. If at all, very, very little. Yes, to even facilitate. Who is this engineer who is in the final year? Who is this medical student who is in the final year going to graduate next year because he studied? Where did they study from?
Okay, let's first of all halt the debate a little, but I'll be coming to you. We had to start with education because it happens to be one of the sectors that has been affected most. But let's quickly take a look at all the key issues that the president addressed during his speech on Sunday. To begin with, as we said at the start, schools will reopen on October 15th for the candidate classes of P7, Senior 4, Senior 6, finalists in tertiary colleges and finalists in universities. The international airport and land borders will now be opened for tourists coming in and going out, provided they tested negative 72 hours before arrival in Uganda, and provided the tour operators ensure that the tourists do not mix with Ugandans. Returning Ugandans who have negative PCR results will be allowed to go home. The Ministry of Health will only get their addresses for follow-up issues. And then restrictions on movements on border districts were also lifted. Curfew from 9 p.m. till 6 a.m. Remains intact, but the borders and their movements must always end at 6 p.m. And places of worship should open with the guidelines below. Individual prayers or confessions with priests or counseling with necessary SOPs. Prayers and fellowships whose numbers do not exceed 70, and by observing all the other standard operating procedures. And of course, those are some of the key issues that came out in the president's address. For you who likes to actually take a bottle or a glass or two during weekends, probably you will have to still contend with doing that from the comfort of your living room, because bars shall remain closed. And of course, also to all white pepper players, casinos, gaming centers, and cinemas remain closed. And mass gathering, more importantly, mass gatherings are still prohibited. And looking at some of these key issues, do you think we are doing this for the sake of the people, or as a country, we are still in that phase where we think COVID will just disappear, or we know anything about when it is going to disappear? Because when you look at the key issues that the president addressed, for example, not opening places like bar, it is something that, makes you feel probably maybe there's something happening behind the scenes.
As a country, just at the very beginning of at the emergence of the pandemic. I think as a government, we did pretty a lot. But I'm thinking the government missed certain steps in way of facilitating citizenry on how to really keep safe. It was more of sensitization, but even then, I'm beginning to think, eh, even then I'm beginning to think that the government worked a little bit in isolation with the community. Fred and dear viewers, there are certain things that the local people were seeing quite clearly, and they would imagine and they would say, they would even urge the government to act in a certain way to try and help the situation. But the government was not doing. The government was operating within a certain group that they created, and they would strictly reason within that. I'll refer you back to a situation when citizens would say, if it's true, the truck drivers are the ones, the long distance drivers are the ones bringing this, then stop them at the border, check them first. Even when you check them, first have their result. It was a loud outcry from the citizenry. But the president comes up and says, you know, we cannot afford to do that. We are going to lose money. Money and life. Today we are caught up in a situation where I think the president got his money he wanted from the truck drivers and the business. But now the spread of the diseases to the roof. What is he going to say? And literally having nothing new to tell people in as far as safeguarding the citizens is concerned. In another fora, I said this, that president and the government will have nothing new to tell citizens on how to protect themselves. We are doing so much when we're in only hundreds. And by the time we are reaching 200, you realize over 100 recoveries. So we are just cancelling almost equally well. But now we are talking over we are almost 6,000. And then almost coming to 100 deaths. The best, the government, and this is a situation the president thinks is now against the wall, he should do something quite significant. And among other things, is to try and begin relaxing some of the safety measures. Yes, for two reasons. One, nothing so practical they can put on table to protect citizens. But also, true to that is that citizens have to survive. In the event that the government is not having an alternative, no subsidies to the citizens to survive on from the government, the best is you have to allow them to survive. Do you know, for instance, why churches are to open? I'm telling you, I live in the community as a leader. Everywhere you go, way back, catechists, priests, sheikhs, more so catechists, more so Christian communities. Their leaders will tell you, churches are closed. We are just struggling. We cannot survive. With all the good intentions, we all know, with due respect, catechists, priests survive on some of those handouts from Christians. Now the churches are locked. They are suffering. They are suffering. It's a fact. They are suffering. So you realize, I think the president is also under pressure from the Christian community, from the church leadership, or Christian leadership in this country across the board, to do something. And then when you have no alternative, just as I said, what do you want to say? You want to say, okay, go out and do certain things, but please try to do it within this and that. The SOPs we are talking about, literally there is nothing new the government has added onto the old SOPs we are talking about. What actually the government has fallen short of, and I will tell you this, once they do that, they would have run out of ideas totally. To see that the masks are distributed all over the country. Once that is done, then I don't think they will have any other thing. Now, they are sending us what the president is doing.
Actually, we need to take a break. Hold that point there. When we get back, you will definitely start it right there. Talking about mask in the district where we are right now, that is Nebi district, the mass distribution as we talk right now has not taken place. That means the people of Nebi have not received their government masks, and that brings into question the strategy the government is using to fight COVID-19 in some parts of the country. We need to take a break, and when we get back, that is the point from which we'll be starting. Thank you so much. We are streaming live on Facebook, and don't forget to like our Facebook page and also subscribe to our YouTube channel. This is the Political Dive on Northern TV. We'll be right back in a flash. Right, welcome back from that short break. Good to know you are streaming us live on Facebook. This is the Political Dive program on Northern TV. Fred Senior is my name. And of course, today on the show, we are hosting Mr. Geoffrey Thoruinywa, or Honorable Geoffrey Thoruinywa Jeff. He is the male district councillor representing the people of Thatha Division at Nebi District Local Government. And of course, we are making sense of the presidential address on COVID-19 that took place on Sunday. Today is Wednesday, the 23rd of September 2020. And of course, we are right here at Icon Lounge, where we are talking some of the key issues as pertains to President Musevenis' address on COVID-19. To get back with our discussion, just before we took that particular break, remember, Honorable Jeff hinted on something to do with the mask distribution by the government, which until now hasn't touched. Maybe, Honorable, as we get back from this particular break, you did mention a very important point, and that is the phase of the mask distribution. From the time the government announced their plans to distribute masks, more especially in areas of the border in the country, up to now, nothing has reached Nebi. From your role as a leader, where has it all gone wrong in terms of this particular process of fighting COVID-19?
I remember, Fred, I told you the government, in a way, in its own setting, centrally, they were working in isolation. Remember, by structure, we had task forces all over the country at district level. You know very well how there was that disconnect between the task force at the district with the national ones. We've had a lot of issues that would come out of the lockdown and situation, directly affecting people. The vulnerability of our people, the food distribution, something that Ugandans pulled out their own resource, their own money, and other well-wishers putting together. And the president and the government comes up to say that it's for the vulnerable in urban centers. I want to believe that in this entire country we have urban centers all over. For as long as you have a district somewhere, there is an urban center. that would accommodate people you think that survive from hand to mouth. We would raise the issues here as well. We had them. We had the vulnerable. We had the elderly. We had the destitutes on the street. Then we had the disabilities. They're all there. We could easily identify them. And we would also coordinate and communicate to the district task force about the plight of these people. Now, there was nothing. So, to the extent that even the food that was collected together to be distributed would not be enough even to the areas they wanted them to say. Now, what I was trying to say is that whatever the government was doing, they did not have a wider picture of the needs and demands of the citizenry. They were looking at the immediate ones just within them like a city. I will remind you this. When we went through a lockdown, and at a certain moment when the government decided to ease down on some of those conditions, border districts remained locked for some period of time. Nebi was one of them because they were tagged high-risk districts or high-risk areas. In my humble thinking, when you're more vulnerable, that's more reason why you should be attended to more. So I would imagine that the government could have concentrated on the high-risk areas, so to speak, the border districts.
In terms of interventions.
Yeah, in terms of interventions. Rightly so. 4 months down the road, 4 months back, when the government finally launched the mass distribution of masks, the first 6 districts that were supposed to receive mask consignments were actually border districts, and Nebi was one of them. We also, in the media, on TV, the Deputy Prime Minister, General Moses Ali, flagging off trucks. I think it was from Ginger, but up to now, our truck has not reached Nebi. It's on the road. After 4 months, the gagas of this world, KKT, whatever, they travel for 6 hours, Kampala to here. But Ginger has become so far away that up to now, 4 months down the road, our truck has not yet reached with the masks.
Do you think, in a way, the fight against COVID-19 has been politicized?
Not necessarily politicized, but it's been a blend of a lot of insincerity. People are not sincere enough. People looked at all this arrangement as a way of survival. You see that.
So there are people who are making a kill out of the COVID money.
You're not going to ask me alone, because as I tell you this, if me as an ordinary citizen can tell you that even when the government decides to have mass distribution, we did not have the capacity to produce those masks. Remember, international borders were closed. We were not even going to have them imported. But the government comes from nowhere to say, we are going to distribute masks for everyone. From where they will be coming, nobody knows. But the next time they're saying they are giving contracts to our local industries to manufacture this, those factories would take a year to manufacture half of the required. We are talking about 40 million masks. About 40 million masks. The factories cannot do that. So some of us saw it clearly that it was not tenable and it was not going to work.
So do you think the problem actually comes from how the whole fight against COVID started? Because at one point you said when the citizens were demanding that the borders be closed and whoever was to come in, whether a truck driver or not, was supposed to be tested first before they are allowed into the country. But the government kept on saying they needed money and they could not do that.
Not only that, to make sure that they were so naive, they would say, they test you, then go into the community. Results will find you there. Logic. If I'm a suspect, by the way, you're testing me because I'm a suspect. But again, you're sending me into the community. You're testing me because you want to protect. That results will find me on the way in the community. Logic. Logically, honestly, you do see that someone is playing around with the minds and survival of the citizens. So it didn't make sense to the. Now you begin asking, how can the whole government, with that very high-powered team, cannot even reason this simple thing? So along the way, you realize it's a batch of unserious lads sitting around, taking decisions unrealistically.
Does the problem lie with President Museveni or the team of people around him in this particular case?
Someone will tell you that the president would always wait for reports and then he will act on it. And the president himself will always tell you, the scientists will tell him what to do. He consults, then he takes decisions. Yes, but the president, I know, should have known better that as a president also he has the authority to really overrule some of those decisions. So they all came. Scientific decisions you can also take natural whatever to decide on certain things, because we are gifted by that, with that natural, that you can have some reasoning capacity to take actually naturally a decision to even not go scientific. So for me, whatever is happening now, it's a clear manifestation that we lost it from the word go.
And is there a way we can recover from that?
The way we can recover from that is that let citizens realize and appreciate that their survival is in their own hands.
Okay, let's take another break. When we get back, I will be engaging our guest today on whether this country is taking the right trajectory in as far as the fight and the gradual opening of the country is concerned at a time when the rest of the world, amidst the upsurge in infections, opening. Stay tuned. This is the Political Dive on Northern TV. Thank you so much for subscribing to our YouTube channel and, of course, also liking our Facebook page. We'll be back in a short while. Welcome back to our second last episode of the Political Dive program on Northern TV. You are watching us live on our Facebook page. Thank you for that. And of course, we hope that you are having a good time with us on set today. Right, we'll be getting into more of the discussion in as far as President Museveni's Sunday address is concerned on COVID-19. Yes, Honorable, at a time when the rest of the world is gradually opening. And of course, with not much restrictions, only we could talk about the SOPs that are put in place, one of which is actually the continued usage of masks and also sanitizers. Do you think as a country we are in the right path compared to the rest of the world?
Oh my God. Right path is to say the least. I'm thinking if we're exactly on the right path, from where we started, we could have suppressed this pandemic much more and more. But we're in a situation where now it's actually increasing every day. Just 2 days ago, Uganda registered the highest record in a single day of over 400. It can't be now. considering how much we've invested into the fight. It can't be now. The mere fact that regardless of all we've done as a government, as a nation, it's now that we can register as high as over 400 cases. Then it tells us that.
So in a way, all the earlier or initial efforts have gone to waste.
You see, locally here, I told you, if you want to pass a message to someone to protect themselves, and then you think you can do that by beating them, caning them on the street, arresting them, kicking out whatever merchandise, whatever business they are doing, then you're creating a different environment that is not conducive, is a kind of environment that cannot facilitate coexistence, which will finally result into environment that we can engage, discuss and listen to each other. Because what we are fighting, we are not fighting this enemy that you can physically look at and run after, that you want to hold.
How did you expect the government to know how to make people, for example, follow some of the SOPs, given that this is something that came all over the world as something new, and no one exactly knew how to enforce all regulations that are geared towards fighting it?
I will tell you, if it were anything that would spread like a bushfire, for instance in Nebi, then it should have happened that way. Because typical example like in Nebi, how you would get information from the task force of I don't know how many people who sit wherever they sit, and the condition is so loud. And I want to tell you this, the president from the word go, the president has always been very, very clear in his communication. The president would communicate in the simplest term for everyone to understand what they are trying to say and how dangerous this is. And people would take that. I would see the passion with which Ugandans would really mark the time the president is going to address the nation. And everyone would want to be next to their radios or TV to watch. But on the ground, we needed to implement this as a government on the ground. But for many times we see that our local leaders, in a way of trying to go along with the president's voice in trying to implement and adopt some of these SOPs and terms that the president has put. You and I saw, instead, citizens were being beaten on the street. So it instead created enmity between the locals and the local leadership that actually are supposed to encourage us to do this. So
What did you expect the government to do to make sure citizens follow the SOPs and or the regulations?
Fred, if you want me to listen to you, first of all, you should know that I'm also a human being. In a situation we are talking about survival, you've literally closed down all the avenues for someone's survival. That alone is so bitter, okay? That alone is such a pain. So what you needed to do, you need actually to commensurate with that person, that there's sense of loss, there's sense of hardship, but it's because of a reason. And then, how do we get out of this together? You see? That was a challenge. You saw throughout the country cases were coming. How policemen, LDUs. Do you know that there are certain deaths that were registered during this COVID-19 and in the implementation of some of these SOPs that were actually not COVID, but COVID related? Do you know that guns and beatings killed more people than even the COVID? Yes. In some districts, people were killed by security agencies that they are trying to enforce the directives of the president. Even when the president says, don't beat someone, don't shoot, people are being beaten, people are being shot at, and have lost lives. So that creates that animosity between the supervisors or implementers of this arrangement. And you become enemies with the community. They are not going to take what you're going to tell them. In any case, you're caning someone who has slept hungry. You're caning someone who does not have a coin in his pocket, and it's because you don't want him to go and work. He will take it wrongly. So the relationship between the task force, the various task forces in the districts, was another thing to look at. How were they acceptable by the community? How were they cooperating? How were they working? You see, if you tell me they were keen to point out that, okay, someone has crossed the borders from Congo, for our case, maybe from Sudan, okay, then you go and you bring that person. That is good enough. But how about this person who comes? I'll give you an example. Here in town, when our task force would sit in a meeting, the next thing they are only deciding to come and chase people from the street by canes and all this. And before you realize it, the town is surrounded by security forces. Citizens are beaten. People have wounds. People have lost money. People have lost property in so many ways because of implementing this. And then I would imagine, how about after the meeting? After the meeting, take a ride, get a public address system on a truck, whether you are the RDC or what, who is the head of the task force, take a slow drive while talking, passing information to the people that don't do this. Please, let's do this like this. And people will understand, because these people already are grieved. They're already struggling. But you cannot also come in so hard on them by way of sticks and all that. Today, what is happening in town? The curfew starts at 9. By 9, there are people who are still slow in town. But the security agencies are there. Do you know what they will do? They find you by 9, maybe you're still fidgeting around. They will come to you and say, time up. Please mobilize and leave.
And you think that is how they should have started?
Yes, it's important to first of all cause the rapport, cause that relationship first. And they will say, please go, it's time. It's only when they come back and find you still there, and then they think you're defiant. And people are coping up. Whether they are borders or what, once the security comes around to say, okay, go, these guys will go willingly. By the time they're coming back, they see security, they know now they are the ones in the wrong. You have communicated.
Well, into the very last segment of the show, Political Dive on Northern TV. We are here making sense of President Museveni's Sunday address. As we get to wind up, I will be engaging Honorable Jeff on issues of reopening sports and recreational activities. Well, Honorable, you happen to be a keen lover of sports and football in particular. The SOPs regarding the opening of sports is something that some friend of mine described as something that should have been, brought up by European countries who have all the means to try and implement many of them. Quickly, President Museveni talked about players being in camp, but also tests being done on them after a fortnight. Do you think that is something that most of our clubs around here can afford to do?
We all, if you asked me, what other things really people were looking forward to keenly, I think sports has always been one of them, personally. You know very well I manage a club, and the way the season ended left us gapping, and we want to start from where we left. So we were really waiting to hear the story about the news about sports. So it was a welcome news. However, the complication is the applicability of the terms and conditions that the president puts around. Makes it, one, very, very complicated to bring sports fully into play. But Uganda being the country I know and the citizenry, I would boldly say that that's not going to work. But sports will be played, unfortunately. So that's another risk for us. You cannot afford to open up sports activities in Kampala. Let me take, for instance, a few Uganda Premier League clubs could afford that. The Vipers, they have their home. They have a fully fledged stadium, sports stadium. They could do that. Maybe KCCA with the facilities, a few of those. But trust me, should the KCCA, the Vipers of this world, the URIs of this world begin to do that, then football is being played all over the country, including Nebi. You're not going to, most of our playgrounds are open. How are you, first of all, going to stop fans from coming? Yes. And then, you see, even those people they take on as suspects, COVID-19 suspects, that test does not come in handy. So under what arrangement would you want to see clubs, as poor as they are in this country, arranging for mandatory tests for all the players and the staff of the clubs at all levels? It's not practical. So my only fear is that football in particular is coming into play, and it's just going to be business as usual from where these clubs ended last season. It's going to be extremely difficult to implement the SOPs, and I don't see it happening. However, football, it's not my word. I'm not even going to sit here to say we go out to play football, we go out to do this, because that will be against the presidential guidance. But it's going to happen, unfortunately, that people are going to open up and play football in villages, in towns, all over the place, without necessarily following the SOPs.
As we get to wind up, now you keenly followed the presidential address on Sunday. What were the misses and what were the hits in President Museveni's address?
For me, as I said in some other fora when in the media, I'll call it a miss or the hitch as you put it. I did not expect the president to come up and say they've reopened school. However phase it could be, I didn't expect that. First of all, as I said, why are they going to school? Why are these candidate classes going to school? If you talk about candidate classes, then very first thing that comes into my mind that you're preparing these learners for examinations. What examination are you going to give these learners when they have not learned? They have not completed even the syllabus. Even then, when they go to school on the 15th, which term is that? I wanted the government to tell us that we are going for second term, or we are going to complete first term, then going to second term, and then the timing. With this kind of arrangements, what is therefore so difficult? And then, if you think so, when are we going to have the final exams, the national exams? It should be something next year. But remember, next year is also an election year. Politics is taking, the president wants to be elected, and some other MPs, so it's going to be total confusion. Literally, I would think via education we've missed it as a country and as government. Education should have stayed. We said now this is a dead year. I don't know who is influencing President. President Museveni, in one of his earlier addresses, said, even him personally, when he was fighting dictatorship or bad governance in this country, In some part of the country, he literally stopped education, Massacre Front and that side, because that's where he was coming from with this war. But he also said they did not study. However, as of now, some of those people who did not study those years are now prominent people in this government. So this meaning declaring a dead year would not hurt this country so much. We would only miss certain things that would comfortably start afresh next year, if at all we are set to do that. So education, we are confusing ourselves unless it is for a question of accountability. We've sunk a lot of money here paying radios, paying TVs, bringing in printouts. We still don't see where they are. The radios, first of all, they are to supply to all Ugandans. We are still waiting. How many billions went there? You see, now you want to think that after having invested all that into the radios, into the TVs and printing learning materials, definitely you don't take kids to school in classes to learn and you don't examine them. So they're going to forge something like an examination to say that at least we were learning and therefore you need to be examined. We're always asking, why were you paying TVs? Why were you paying radio stations to teach? Is it really sensible enough? Is it logical? Do you think a child who sits in class to learn when a teacher is standing by his side with a stick can sit around next to a radio to learn without any teacher controlling them? Are you sure? You want to see people sitting in front of TV sets to learn? Now this kid may not have had a chance to watch TVs, and now instead of concentrating already is just mesmerized by the screen and by the person on the screen in our setting here. So it was not going to work. And these learning materials not going to work, and up to now I'm telling you there are some officers still keeping those materials, printouts. They have not been given out as they were meant to be. So as far as education is concerned, we should not bury our heads into sand and say we are hiding. We have lost it. Let us accept and start afresh next year, God willing.
Right, we should be getting out of here, but of course I want to take this time to thank you so much for honoring our invite to appear on set again, and we hope that whenever we have that opportunity to have you on set, you will always be our guest.
Always at your service.
Right, thank you so much. We had time with Honorable Geoffrey Thorwinywa Jeff, who is the district councillor representing the people of Tata Division in municipality in the Nebi District Council. A lot still remains to be done in as far as the fight against COVID is concerned. Masks in some parts of the country are yet to be distributed. And in education, the million-dollar question still remains. How about those schools that are acting as quarantine centers in the different parts of the country, and many others? The discussion right here on the Political Dive on Northern TV will take a break, and of course it is going to be until that time when we'll get back with another episode that you'll be able to catch us on set. I still remain your boy Fred Monguriek, and of course I do hope that you had the best of your time with us on the show as much as we did presenting it right to you. Thank you so much for streaming us live on Facebook, and of course do like our page right there on the same platform. You can in the near future be able to tweet us, and that will be at Northern TV. Don't forget as well to subscribe to our YouTube channel. For today, the party comes to a close sadly, but I want to take this time to thank you so much for being an ardent viewer of this show. Until next week, for now, kwaheri. Have the best of your night.